Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ali Potter. I'm a brand and insight consultant with ThirtyThree. What that means is I specialize in crafting employer value propositions and developing and refining employer brands for our many clients. Today, my colleague Lorna and I are going to talk you through how to go from substance, which we mean kind of insight and research, through to style, which is the creative work that Lorna specializes in. So we're going to be talking you through the employer brand journey. Obviously, we only have about 20 minutes, and as any of you who have tried to develop your employer brand will know, that is not long enough to either talk about it or do it, but we will do our best to share some food for thought, and we're available at the end for more conversations. So we've seen some old friends in the room today. ThirtyThree are a really well-established agency in Bristol, and these are some of our smiling faces. They're currently squirreling away down in the tobacco factory just down the road. We are a global employer branding and marketing agency, and we are powered by imagination, enthusiasm, and creativity. No matter what project we're working on, we like to apply these three principles to everything that we do. What do we do? We come up with exciting and innovative ways to engage and attract top talent for some of the biggest employers around. And I also like to add on to that as well, some of the smaller ones as well, because I personally really love working with smaller businesses. I think you can get a lot done, and it's really interesting. But we work with lots of different types of clients. And why do we do that? So the more clearly we can convey the reality of the working experience, the people, and the culture of a business, the more that the right people will want to join you and stay with you. This is about creating long-term emotional connections with candidates and employees rather than focusing on short-term transactional application numbers or hits to a website. It's a very simple idea actually when you see it on the screen, but it's something that takes a lot of hard work and dedication to get right, but it's luckily something that we like to think we specialize in. And how we do that is through four key areas. So the first, as I mentioned before, is employer branding and EVP development, something that a lot of people have been talking about already. Candidate attraction, advertising and marketing. So lots of members of our team are specialists in kind of media planning and making sure we're targeting candidates on the right channels. Digital solutions, fancy word for websites, careers sites, and also social media recruitment. So using channels like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter to try and target candidates in the right ways. And what we do is we take those areas and many more to craft strategies to address the biggest recruitment challenges of our clients. We do that for lots of different clients. I won't go through any of these in detail now. Lorna's going to take you through 4 case studies, but you'll see we work with a real variety of clients from the Army to OVO, Energy, Local, National Trust, Unite Students in the room today. And we love the diversity of our client base as well, and it really lends credence to all of our work. There are very few types of clients that we haven't worked with, but we're always open to exploring the new, and it's amazing the new clients that do come along. So that's a bit about us, and actually more importantly, we wanted to focus on all of you and what you were hoping to get out of this presentation and conference today. So you were asked a question in advance, and that was, what would be your sort of key takeaway for today? And some of the questions that we saw were quite interesting. So how can we develop and improve our EVP? How do I strengthen my employer brand? How can we become an employer of choice? And how do we attract top talent over other companies? Now, all of our answers to these questions would start with research and insight and gathering information and knowledge about your business to start to answer some of these. Developing a really strong EVP is the first step in taking control of your employer brand and becoming a real magnet for the types of people that you want to bring into your business who are going to stay with you, hopefully, for the long run. I've lost count of the number of times that employer brand has been mentioned today, both in the roundtable discussions and the presentations. So I thought it would be helpful to actually define what we mean by employer brand, because I think everyone has quite different views on what it means. I'll read it out for you. Your employer brand is a set of attributes and qualities, often intangible, that makes an organization distinctive, promises a particular kind of employment experience, and appeals to those people who will thrive and perform best in its culture. That's the CIPD definition, and I'm surprised I don't know it off by heart now because I read it out so much. The things I particularly like about this quote I've put in bold. So the first is about it being intangible. I think Mark mentioned earlier it's difficult to articulate a brand, and actually an EVP is about trying to get all of those intangible elements of your people, your culture, your mission, your purpose into something that you can use as a really strong foundation for developing your brand. We talk about making the organization distinctive. This is about really trying to differentiate your business from your competitors for talent. This isn't necessarily about looking at Google and Facebook and all the other 5 employers that were on Neil's list earlier. It's about looking at who are your direct competitors and how do you make yourself distinctive from them. We talk about the employment experience as well. One of the first things I learned about employer brand was the importance of making it not only compelling but also truthful. And perhaps that's more appropriate for employer branding than it is for traditional marketing and branding, because if you misrepresent your employment experience, someone's going to join your business, they're going to realize it's not exactly as they thought it was going to be, and they're going to leave. That's why you get high attrition rates. So representing that employment experience, whether you do that through your messaging, through video, through film, through profiles, that's extremely important. And finally, it's focusing on who's performing best. So here we're talking about people and their attitudes, the behaviors of the people who are really going to excel and enjoy working in a business like yours. All sounds great, so how can you actually do that? Well, your questions didn't surprise us because a lot of our clients will really struggle with getting past the basics of developing an EVP. And an employer brand goes much further than the EVP. It's not just about those pillars, it's about how you activate that, it's how you express it creatively. The good news is we have lots of tried and tested ways of developing employer brands. And if I were to simplify a lot of the jargon that you might hear about it, it would be into three words. That would be understand, engage, and inspire. And I'm going to talk you through what I mean by those. So the first stage in developing your employer brand is to really understand the situation that you're working with and the company that you're trying to represent. We want you to explore the business, ask questions, listen to what people are saying. Don't just go by what your HR director wants to say, by what the CEO thinks the strategic vision of the business is. It's about actually listening to what people are saying and thinking about how you're going to articulate that in a really strong EVP. Only through listening can you actually gain that really, really strong understanding. As I mentioned before, this isn't about becoming your competitors. It isn't about becoming any of these truly admired employers, all of whom have their own problems. This is about authenticity. We've heard that word before today. Telling your own story and really trying to codify that story into something that can be formed as the foundation of your brand. It's not quick, it's not easy, but it definitely pays off. And a lot of the suppliers in the room today will have lots of case studies and examples of where that's been the case. By understanding your business, you're able to build up a really consistent, compelling, and coherent set of messages that underpins all of the rest of the work that you're going to do. So investing in understanding your problem and understanding the business you're trying to represent is extremely important. The next step is engaging, and this is about saying the right things, so that involves getting the story right in the first place, saying the right things to the right people, in the right ways, through the right channels. We need to use all the appropriate touch points. Again, this involves research. We can't just assume that we know what the Gen Z people are using in terms of their social media. We need to actually understand which channels are they using, how are they using them, when are they using them, etc. This is also about connecting with people emotionally. Again, that's a key takeaway from today, connecting with people emotionally. We know that people respond to emotion much more than they do to reason. So trying to engage with them with ways that are going to really win over their hearts and minds is extremely important. And we can do that in lots of ways by getting the messaging right, but also making sure that the creative expression and the ways in which you're communicating it are really hitting the kind of emotion points with your target audience. And finally, to inspire people. And this is the point where the creative expression kind of comes alive and it motivates people to act. So all of the investment that you're making in employer branding, I imagine, is not just to kind of raise profile as an employer. You want people to do something different. Now, that might be initially just changing a perception. We've got lots of examples of clients where that's been the case. It might be, we want you to go and visit our careers website. It might be, we want you to perform better, because actually, whilst you're all focusing on recruitment, a good EVP and a good employer brand can have a huge impact internally as well in terms of engagement and performance at work. So think of it also beyond a pure kind of recruitment exercise. It's also a really holistic ambition for the business to have a really strong employer brand. It can have just as much impact internally as it does externally as well. So you'll notice that the vast majority of the advice that we would give focuses on research and insight. And that's not just because that's what I do every day. It's because actually it is the best way to start off on the right foot with any employer brand development. And I wouldn't want you to go away thinking that if you're halfway through a project with employer branding, you've kind of missed the opportunity to do research. It's actually important all the way through to keep making sure that you're on track and you are targeting people in the right way. That's why we say we like to focus on substance before style. Style is very important. Lorna would argue that, but I also think this substance is really important, making sure that you've got the right foundations in place. And also technology as well. So all of our clients have great careers sites, and the technology side of things is really important. The ATS, I've heard a few grumbles today. You have to have the right story to tell. Your technology is only a facilitator to the messaging that you're trying to put out in the marketplace. So actually, it's really important to not get fixated on, well, my ATS isn't working. You need to focus on technology as well as your brand in the first place, and the research will really help you to get there. On that note, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Lorna, our head of creative, who's going to share 4 case studies with you, and I'm sure you'll be very inspired.
So I'm going to talk about 4 key ways that you can help build a successful employer brand. The first thing we want to talk about is the importance of really doing your homework. We're often surprised to see how many companies launch into developing their EVP without really doing their research first. Doing insight and brand development as an add-on and an afterthought to a consumer brand overhaul, or whether you do it internally with a HR team to save money, whatever the reason, building a successful employer brand depends on thorough research. And why is that? It's because that's the best way to find out what you have to offer, what your unique offering is as an employer. So a great example with this is with LV. We've been working with LV for over 10 years now, and obviously during that time we've seen a lot of growth and change with them. So in 2016, we went on a project with them to evolve their employer brand. LV's locations in Bristol and Bournemouth are heavily surrounded by lots of other insurance companies. So it was really important to find out what it was that makes them stand out in the market. We conducted internal focus groups and external research, and what we found that LV employees were really engaged in their jobs. They really loved what they did, something that we wouldn't necessarily expect to hear from people working for insurance companies. So to capture this feeling, we came up with the concept Heart People, a creative idea with a human touch. This idea celebrated all the different people who worked for LV and all the different qualities, characteristics, and outlooks that they brought to the business. Following the rollout of the revised employer brand, we saw attrition rates decrease by 19%, and the brand continues to go from strength to strength till today. So our next point is around the importance of listening up. So what this means is that creating an employer brand it's the importance of making sure your employer brand feels authentic to each and every person across your business. And to be able to do this depends on listening to all of those different people. If you're only hearing views from a small group of people, or worse still, a specific group of people like your management team, you're not really getting the full picture of what it is that you're offering, and you're not hearing all of the right stories. So in 2016, Top Stars came to us with a problem. They were attracting the wrong kind of people, and because of that, they had high attrition rates. To try and get to the root of this problem, we conducted external research to understand what the audience perceptions were of Top Stars as an employer, and then we also interviewed a cross-section of employees across the business. What we discovered externally, because Top Stars had no employer brand in place, everybody's views were based on misconceptions and myths. So for example, they thought top styles, it must be a very manual place to work, probably very male-dominated, very dusty. So it wasn't really attracting a gender-balanced workplace, and it was attracting the wrong kind of people, because internally, when we spoke to people, especially in the stores, they said that the jobs actually were really creative. They had a lot of customer interactions, they had to come up with a lot of design solutions with people. And there was also a really great family feel, again, especially in stores, that wasn't really coming through in any communications. So, based on this research, we came up with the creative articulation that was Now You Know. And what this did, it gave us the opportunity to feature TOPS employees telling us all the different reasons why they loved their jobs. This was an idea that was very simple, and it allowed us to tell lots of different stories across the business, whether you were working in store or in head office. It allowed us to create the right employer brand to be able to attract the right people for all those different roles. So with TOPS Tiles, we heard the importance of understanding from your external audience about their perceptions of your business. But equally, it's important to understand about your external audience what it is that they want to hear about. There's not very much point spending time and money on creating the best stories if nobody's listening to them. So, Unite students came to us last year to work on their employer brand and careers website to try and understand the external perceptions of them as an employer and build the creative to resonate with the target market. We conducted surveys in locations all across the country where we knew they would be recruiting. We've discovered lots of different insights. One of the key ones was that they wanted friendly management, something I think everybody wants in their job. But actually, only 22% of people thought that they would get that from a job at Unite Students. Equally, they said that they wanted really convenient locations, something that Mark touched on earlier. So based on these messages and lots of other insights we compiled, we made sure that all of our communications were putting these key things front and center. The creative articulation we developed based on all these research and insights was careers with character for people with personality. Oops, sorry, too far forward there. This gave us a platform to put people front and center in the campaign, and we used real employees to highlight that Unite Students celebrates all the different strengths that everybody brings to their role and to the business. Our final point is around the importance of telling the right stories. So you can have the best websites and the best technology, lots of things we heard about today, but you need to be saying the right thing. Compelling, authentic stories told in an engaging way to the right audiences are key to enhancing your employer brand. Last year, AXA Global underwent a massive brand refresh to become more customer-centric. Our task was to align our cultures and values work that we had done to the updated brand identity. AXA's new purpose globally was to empower people to live a better life, creating an experience that put the customer first in everything that AXA did. So we needed to translate this purpose to show that working at AXA can lead to a better life for the employees, for their customers, and for society as a whole. So to do this, we interviewed a range of people across AXA globally and found some really amazing stories. So for example, somebody had created a new type of insurance that protected against climate change. Another person had created a global town hall, so AXA employees all over the world could basically get together for that. But actually, I think the best story that I heard was from this guy, Sylvian, at the end there. So he spearheaded AXA's divestment in tobacco. And I actually went and met with him for the photo shoot and asked him about, how difficult was that? Did you have to have lots of meetings and really work to convince people? And it was really interesting. He said, no, he said, I thought that, it didn't make sense for a health insurer to be promoting tobacco products by investing them. So I put together a presentation with my team, went to a meeting, and they agreed with me. And he said, the finance people don't really like me anymore, but I think it's a fantastic story of how AXA is empowering its employees within the workplace to help people live a better life. And we're now rolling out the same employer brand across the UK, so if you keep your eyes out, we'll have the new AXA UK Careers website up soon. So, just to recap, we've talked about 4 key takeaways. Do your homework. Make sure your employer brand development is rooted in research. Listen up. Make sure you're listening to a broad cross-section of employees all across your business to create an employer brand that feels authentic to each and every person. Go outside. Find out what your perceptions are of your brand externally, but also what it is that they want to hear. And the last one, tell stories. Make sure you're telling authentic, compelling stories That's the best way that you can connect with people on an emotional level. And that's it. So as Ali said, obviously 20 minutes is quite a whistle-stop tour. So if you want to hear more, we'd love to meet you. So come and say hi, we'll be around.